I opened my eyes in the middle of the night. This doesn't usually happen to me. When I go to bed at night, I sleep until I wake up in the morning, until I'm awakened by the insistent sound of the alarm clock, or until I don't get a good night's sleep. But here I was, lifting my eyelids and staring into the darkness. What woke me up? There was a certain feeling as if something was wrong, as if something had happened. But what? I stretched out my arm in search of my smartphone, which I had habitually placed on the small nightstand next to the bed. The darkness was impenetrable, not a single light, and I even pulled back the curtains, hoping that the light from the lampposts would penetrate the room and dilute the thick, lingering gloom that gave my body goosebumps. It wasn't that I was afraid of the dark. No, I'd never seen it. But in this case, things were a little different. Realizing that the situation outside the window was no different from the one in my apartment, I tried to unlock my phone. "What?" I said out loud, when all my attempts to unlock the gadget were in vain. Strangely, I remembered that the battery charge was just under 100%. Maybe it's broken or glitchy. Okay, whatever. I got out of bed and headed toward the door, flicked the switch, but nothing happened. I left the room and walked toward the kitchen by feel and memory, listening to the oppressive silence every now and then. Strange, because it often happened that I had to go to bed late at night, and I could say with certainty that even close to morning there were sounds outside the window, whether it was the barking of dogs in the distance, or the rumble of cars that occasionally but still pass on the highway, and a lot of other sounds. But not today. The only thing that surrounded me was darkness and grave silence. When I managed to get to the kitchen table, I picked up a lighter, which, by the way, I always left in the same place out of habit. I flicked the wheel. Nothing, not a single spark. The second attempt was also futile, as well as all the subsequent ones. I started digging in the drawers of the table in search of a candle and matches, which I had stocked up long ago, as it often happened that the electricity was cut off, and sitting in the dark was such a pleasure. But what was my surprise when the matches refused to light, as if some invisible force was preventing it and trying very hard to keep me in the dark. The matches refused to light, as if some invisible force was preventing it and trying very hard to keep me in the dark. The moment the door opened, I saw the same picture as in the apartment itself. Darkness as dark as an eye can see, and an oppressive silence. Yes, I forgot to say, I live on the first floor, which played an important role in my story. If my apartment was even a floor higher, I can say with certainty that I did not go out, and perhaps I would not write this now, but alas, nothing can change. My intuition said no, not like that. It was screaming, "Go inside, something's wrong." But curiosity overcame common sense. I decided to go outside, which I later regretted very much. Slowly, step by step, I went down the stairs, and when I found myself in front of the massive iron door, I opened it without a second thought. I could see nothing, not even my outstretched arm, not to mention the neighboring house, the bench next to the entrance, the bushes and everything else that surrounded our house. Realizing that I wouldn't be able to find out anything, I went back to my den and locked the door, and then took small steps toward my room, as suddenly, behind me there was a strange sound. At that moment I stood still and listened. I felt as if someone was staring at me, a sense of persecution. My heart went into heels, and my body was covered with goosebumps. Pouring sweat, on shaky legs, knocking everything in my path, hitting walls and cabinets. I flew into my room, closed the door, leaned back, and slid down the door. I tried to catch my breath and realize what had just happened, and what the hell was it? A moment later, there was a quiet pounding on the door, and then slowly something sharp scratched at it. "Open up, I know you're in there!" I screamed and crawled on all fours, whimpering, toward the bed, sat down beside it, hugging my arms around my knees while my body shook like I'd just been out in the freezing cold in my underwear. "Open up, bitch." A gruesome, hoarse voice came from behind the door, and then the heavy thumping mixed with growls, sobs, and heartbreaking shrieks left me petrified with fear. I sat like that until dawn, and the pounding on the door and the sounds that accompanied it didn't stop for a moment. Apparently, the thing that had entered my dwelling wanted to get to me very badly, and I could not imagine what would happen to me in such a case. At first light, there was silence, and I decided to go to the door and listen. When I realized there was no one behind the door, I left the room and staggered out. The door was in such a state, as if a lion pride had been hanging out in my apartment all night, and they were attracted to this very door. The moment I was in the kitchen, a familiar sound came from behind me. Turning around, I saw nothing, the same darkness, and afterward my consciousness left me. Whoever was there had managed to trick me. He'd tricked me and taken my soul with him. The moment I left the apartment, I managed to leave the front door open, thus allowing it to come in. It took it as an invitation, which is why it couldn't get into the room, because it can't get in without an invitation, and it's also a trickster, a hallucinator, a believer in something that can't and shouldn't be there, which is what happened in my case. And me, I was left without a soul. Yes, I live, if I can put it that way, but you can't call it life. All the colors are gone, everything is monotonous, I don't feel taste, smell, I don't enjoy what used to give pleasure. Everything is gray and dull. There are no emotions or feelings. I live with my body but not with my soul. To hell with this life. Goodbye. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember, never open the door and do not leave the house, because not for nothing they say, my home is my fortress.